One Carbon World is a not-for-profit organisation committed to supporting companies and businesses on their low-carbon journey. We believe action to tackle climate change has the potential to also support social and environmental goods and help communities. We began our life supporting businesses on their low-carbon journey by measuring, reducing and rebalancing their carbon footprint. This included advice, guidance to organisations on how to set tailored targets, particularly through the Science Based Targets Initiative, SBTI. We believe companies should be doing everything they can, big or small, to start their low carbon journey. For some companies, this takes time, but we believe every step is a good one. We have recently begun expanding our work into nature-based solutions projects in the carbon market. This is very much in response to what our customers have been asking for, which is high integrity carbon credits to support their low carbon journey. We particularly support our customers and clients and projects through the MRV process, monitoring, reporting and verification, to ensure that their process, their activities are high integrity and comply with all the relevant data and global verification requirements. Ultimately, we believe that carbon markets are a key part of the climate journey for a number of organisations. Finally, we are a UNFCCC observer organisation. For us, this is really important because it gives us an opportunity to profile and support best practice from around the world. And we're delighted to be able to do this to encourage and incentivise a better carbon market. We believe that the global carbon markets are at an inflection point. We have seen all of the forecasts about the potential scale of the market and some pretty bombastic estimates about the cost of carbon in 2050. And so whilst we believe that these markets will grow, what most people don't know is the scale and pace and geographical spread of how the markets will expand. Some have said that there is a dampening of demand in the African carbon market. We think exactly the opposite. In the financial services sector, there is a saying, which is that a volatile market is a vibrant market and one filled with vitality. And we think that this rings pretty true for the African carbon market. The MSC Sustainability Institute, who produces guidance and research on the carbon markets, have come up with a pretty compelling statistic, which is that the commitments to purchase high quality nature-based solutions projects in the first half of 2025 has tripled in comparison to 2024, the first half of 2024. Their assessment shows to me that demand is hot, particularly for high integrity credits, which is fantastic because they're saying that a lot of these credits are selling at around about the $50 a tonne mark. And for us, where we believe that high integrity projects and credits are the sweet spot and where we should all be aiming, this is a really, really positive sign at the moment. However, when we look across the African picture, it is very different. Different African countries are at a different point in their journey of understanding and taking advantage of the carbon markets globally, whether that is the VCM working through voluntary systems or the Article 6 arrangements that are in place. Some African countries are really just beginning to dip their toe into the carbon markets, whereas others are frankly global leaders through articulating robust, transparent frameworks at the national level, whether that's for Article 6 or the voluntary market. So it is patchy, but there is definitely a development of the sector overall in a positive direction. The key question, I think, for the next 5 to 10 years is whether these regulatory environments can grow in a way that continues to ensure external investment is facilitated and that we don't see barriers to the engagement of external finance into these national carbon markets. We welcome regulation, we welcome strong regulation. Regulation helps build trust of all the stakeholders that are needed in the carbon market. So that is trust from communities, that their wishes will be honoured and respected. It's trust from project developers that it is worth their time and their investment in engaging in the market, and trusts also from buyers and consumers of carbon credits that when they make commitments financially, those commitments will be honoured. So we believe that the key element of a regulatory framework needs to be building this trust. What we would like to also see more of, which I think is really critical for scale in the carbon market, is sharing between different countries on how they are developing their jurisdictions. So particularly on nature-based solutions, if you want to achieve large landscape level change, you need frameworks across countries and neighbouring countries that allows for transboundary work to happen. And that also reflects the realities of the ecosystem in which we are working to. The place where we need to do more of this kind of exchange is very exciting. We have the Africa Carbon Markets Summit coming up in Johannesburg in October, CMAS. We also have in a couple of weeks' time the really important second Africa Climate Summit in Addis Ababa. And these are places where buyers, consumers, project developers, countries, communities, NGOs can get together and exchange notes and learn from each other, which we think is really important at this point in the market. One final element that we would really like to see is an increase in domestic resource mobilization into the carbon markets. So this is happening in some places. South Africa is a very good example, thanks to the role of the JSE, the stock exchange, but also the domestic regulatory framework. This is incentivizing domestic institutions and domestic financial institutions to invest in the market. And this is a really helpful supplementary financial flow alongside external investment into the development of the markets. So One Carbon World at our heart is an MRV institution. We believe that data is power. It's power for communities, it's power for the market, it's power for CEOs and boardrooms to understand what is happening in their business. It's easy to think that in our modern interconnected world where AI can answer a question for you in moments, any question, that the importance of data science is diminishing, but that simply isn't the case in the climate change context, particularly because AI has not yet grasped the nuances and sophisticated dynamic nature of a number of the ecosystems in which we are working on nature-based solutions projects. I'll just give you one example. We are working with clients in Africa to understand the impacts of the carbon in avocado plantations, which are really dynamic and interesting ecosystems. And when we have done some of our statistical analysis of what is happening in those avocado plantations, unfortunately, if you asked AI, they would give you answers based on data generated in other parts of the world, but not in Africa. So from Australia, South America, etc. Now that is helpful, but what does that really tell you about what is going on in a really complicated ecosystem in central Kenya or in southern Africa? Not much. What you still need ultimately is people, scientists, agronomists, farmers, laborers, smallholder communities to be out there in the ecosystem on the farm, taking measurements and explaining what is happening in these really dynamic ecosystems year on year. Our companies understand this, and they know that if you don't understand what is happening with your carbon, then you don't really understand what is happening with your farm, your soil, or your community. Carbon data is essentially management data now. And so for some companies, having this data might mean they decide to do more insetting within their own value chain, or they might decide that actually the best way to realize the value of this carbon is through a nature-based solution intervention, which also has the benefit of diversifying revenue streams for businesses and communities. Again, without this data, year on year, people would struggle to make these decisions in an informed way. Ultimately, MRV is essential for assuring robust removals and emissions reductions, that they are quantifiable, additional, permanent, and that they avoid leakage, so that we're all doing what we say we are doing. MRV is about ensuring that claims are verified, and that if you don't have this kind of confidence in the market, then you'll never achieve scale in the nature-based solution space. So MRV is the source of investable credits ultimately. And for us, that's also why it's really important that we see sophisticated project design taking account of MRV from the beginning of the project cycle, so that we are taking advantage of the data from the very first day that we begin. We are worried a little about one of the barriers to scale, which is that there still remains a lack of really consistently high quality data in the African carbon markets. African scientific institutions are doing their best to help fill this gap, and they are really committed to doing so. For example, many African universities and research institutions are developing anometric equations for key species, but ultimately there is still insufficient data in the global system around some of these ecosystems. And we would like to see the global verification schemes and VBBs working a little bit harder to try and work with scientific institutions to fill evidence gaps and build a robust and healthy African science base for the future. So I think the best example to talk about here is a company we're very proud on working with. We worked with a large vegetable grower, processor and exporter in East Africa since 2021. They have an incredibly strong commitment to sustainability at their core. And in 2021, we worked with them to produce their first carbon inventory for scopes 1, 2, and 3 emissions. Our aim was to establish the 2021 baseline to underpin their ambitious target, which was to achieve net zero operational emissions for scope 1 and 2 by 2025. This first inventory, which we produced alongside the company, provided the organisation with critical data that allowed them to adjust their operational footprint to meet their targets. They decided to build a new factory, and in this factory invested in huge amounts of exciting renewables technology, from a biomass boiler to solar panels, and continued energy efficiency measures as well. And as a result of this sort of investment and commitment, they were able to reduce their scope 1 and 2 emissions by 80% against the 2021 baseline. And in fact, the factory in which they built has won a really impressive IFC Edge certification award, which is one of the first in East Africa. But the beauty of this process, this inventory process, is that really it gave the company huge amounts of data for other areas of their operations. So whether it was waste and water, or giving them data on their suppliers to have really robust conversations about procurement and supplier contracts in the future. So this was just the start of their ability to innovate and grow along their kind of green journey. We are now also working with them to do a really exciting carbon removals inventory to assess the existing removals potential and realities on their land, which is going to be really exciting to see if we can move forward into some nature-based solutions as well. So I think one of the key challenges we see, whether it is working with businesses or projects, is having the data you need readily available. So for businesses, this is sometimes because the sustainability teams don't necessarily have control over the areas of the business where the data is generated. Sometimes for businesses, they've simply never collected this kind of data before. And so we work very closely with businesses to try and find easy ways for them to build their own internal evidence base and data collection processes. This is really a living embodiment of the idea of sustainability being a whole of business endeavor. The other challenge we sometimes see is that when you do an inventory for a business, they do identify some upfront investment that needs to be made into new technologies. And again, this can be difficult to sell internally to stakeholders. But the beauty of the inventory is you are also gathering data on the dirty parts of the business and how much they are costing you. And so when you pitch to the board or the CEO, you can weigh up the upfront investment of new technology against the costs you are incurring from the dirty technology. And invariably, if you can present this as an investment that will pay off in years 2, 3, 4, and 5, we see companies taking that step and moving forward, which is fantastic. The opportunity here really is to be at the cutting edge of climate innovation, and a number of the businesses we work with are excited to be market leaders and want to take these steps. And I've realized that actually it's not really about a profit loss calculation, but taking steps towards green innovation and adopting green technologies actually helps you manage the risk to your business in the longer term, whether that's risks from supply, risks from energy security, or frankly risks from the consumer market that no longer accepts companies who aren't starting their green journey. So it really helps you secure your customer base and your supplier base for the future. So we are very, very proud to be working with the VUCA Group and have been selected as their sort of climate impact partner for the CMAS Summit. We will be measuring the carbon footprint of the CMAS Summit in October in Johannesburg with VUCA. VUCA believes in leading by example, which includes setting high standards for themselves. While they've already begun to work in this area, we are really happy that we can take this forward and deepen the commitment through a bespoke carbon footprint for their event. Our partnership, we hope, will enable VUCA to gather huge amounts of data to understand the impacts of their summits, and we were excited to work with them to talk about how we can then reduce some of those emissions and set some targets to do that. By working together, we hope to be able to track year-on-year improvements. It is a journey, and we think that this is a really, really powerful move by an organisation who are not only hosting the critical green conversations that we need about Africa's future, but are also leading the way by walking the walk themselves. Our key message at this event is that Africa is leading and that Africa doesn't need the outside world to tell them to do that. African stakeholders and innovators are developing and leading the market at the moment, and that the most important thing at this point in the progress and development of the African carbon market is partnership. Partnerships between businesses, partnership between project implementers to learn from each other, partnerships with communities, finding new ways to deliver value at the grassroots level. Partnership is the way we will get scale out of the African carbon market and ensure it is delivering for everybody. Women's Day is a really, really important day to celebrate in South Africa. We need to continue to honour our mothers, grandmothers, sisters, wives and friends for the amazing contribution that women have made in South Africa against huge hardship and against deep struggles in the past. And some still continue to struggle to make ends meet, to support their families. We know that women throughout the continent are underutilised and underrepresented in decision-making structures and in power centres. And this is no different in the climate space. But what we do have is a group of vocal and exciting women at the grassroots level from across the continent who are making their voices heard, building on the legacy of Wangari Maathai from Kenya in the 90s. And I'm delighted to celebrate women's contribution on climate change this month and this day. Thank you.